Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool. And as you know, I love lineman pliers, and pliers that look like lineman pliers that are also known, I guess, as combination pliers. So it was inevitable I was going to pick up a pair of the Knipex. This is the 0902-240. 240 millimeters length. It's the 09 plier with the comfort grip handle, which I really think is important on linemen's because a lot of times I'm not using gloves, but I might be cutting something big, like, snapping through some Romex or something. But anyway, I wanted to show you a couple of differences. The price, Snap-on to me right now, I think is the most kind of Gucci. This one, it's really nice, but it's expensive. It's often twice as much as the other pliers. In fact, it's almost twice as much as the Knipex. The Kleins, you can actually get these in the $30 to $40 range, more like the $40 range, or sometimes a little bit over $42. Ideal is about the same, a little less. Greenlee you can get even for less, and these actually are really solid cutters. I'm always impressed. And then Milwaukee's, joined the fray with their hand tools, and now they've got their version of a lineman. The feature set on a lineman, and these are probably the least expensive here. I can't remember what they are. You can get them maybe 15, 20 bucks. The Greenlees are probably in the 20s. The Ideal is approaching 30, I believe, maybe a little over. Klein, I think these run in around 35 to 39, depending. There's some small differences, such as if you get the, fish tape puller or crimper or something. But then Snap-ons were pushing 80, whereas Knipex, I got these I think for about 42 on Amazon. And then here's just an old pair of combi pliers. This was my grandfather's years ago. But anyway, the main feature set. What do we have? You've usually got some really beefy hatched, highly textured jaws way up at the front, followed by some pretty significant cutting knives. Now that is one difference. If you notice, cutting knife length. Some of them are longer, some are shorter. The Knipex has what seems to be the longest of any of my pliers. So if you compare that, you can see it's definitely longer. Compare it to the Klein, a little longer, and then to the Snap-on, a little longer. So after that, I'll jump to the bottom here. There is a useful area. There's actually two. One is the space here in the action. The other is whether or not there's something going on under the plier. In this case, you can see it has got some texture for grabbing and holding things. And so that adds something to it. The Snap-on is the same here. The Klein's got nothing under there. This one has got a little bit, this is the Ideal, it's got a little bit of both some traction there and also, this looks more like a crimper. There is also fish tape pullers that look similar, that allow you to grab a hold of a material and then like a fish tape or any kind of material used for pulling wires. There's all kinds of stuff. And use the pliers more in this configuration, kind of yanking it. Greenlee, they've got some texture under there. And then same with the Milwaukee. It's got a little bit of texture and then also what could be a crimper or a fish tape puller. The thing with the Klein, though, and I'll go to the next area, has to do with the position of the pivot, especially in relation to the knives. Notice it's not centered. It's way up high. That really causes an increase in the leverage versus if you drop it down a little bit lower or make it a little bit bigger. And most of these are pretty big. And there is some room. In fact, you can see kind of all of them are much bigger than the Knipex. You can see the comparison of those circles. So what's going on here is this, by making the circle a little smaller, it's the absolute center of the circle we're worried about. That is the fulcrum point in this lever system. So the closer you can get the center of this rivet or the center of the circle to the beginning of the cutting edges, the more leverage you have. If you use a great big rivet, you could argue, yeah, it might be stronger, but it also moves that center point down just a little bit. And in the small amount of distance you might be working with, that makes a difference in how much effort is required on this end of the lever. And in the case of the Knipex, they have pushed it about as far as they could get and still have a strong rivet and not break out into, if you can see that, not break out into the material at the very top. So, it's kind of a balancing act. Oh, I was going to mention this space here can also be used for grabbing fish tapes or other materials because you've got a really impressive amount of leverage as this thing starts to crunch down and close. Not all pliers have that. This is definitely a fish tape puller here. Usually they have the ramp. But not all pliers have that space. The linemen's generally do. And that's also one way you can kind of tell. That's, to me, one of the deciding factors in alignment. But if I go to something else, you can see it's just a standard centered pivot here, like on that one or this. It's not, there isn't really much that you can work with in this spacing here. But anyway, I like them. I played around with them. I've been cutting different materials with them. I won't go through and cut all of the with all the different pliers, but they just zap through this Romex quite easily. Oddly, so far, the ones that really seem to cut it the best are these older Greenlees. The only problem is the expansion here. If you look at jaw expansion, the Greenlees are a little bit limited. So that's one of the differences. But anyway, the more I play with it, the more I like them. So if you're in the market for a really good pair of linemans, I've been always singing the praises of the Snap-ons, and Kleins are rock solid. But I thought I'd compare the Knipex. These Knipex cut a little bit better than the Klein. I also, here's a test. Grab, well, you don't even really need anything in it, but sometimes it helps to get just a little bit wide. And squeeze really hard and see what's happening with your hand. Does it hurt anywhere? Do you get any hot spots? When I do that with the Knipex, it seems like a much more uniform grab here. And then I started to notice just this contour. That's not exactly the contour of my hand when I'm grabbing. In fact, it might even be a little bit the opposite. Now that's designed because maybe your fingers are shorter, so if you grab down, you're dropping in, but I feel it on this end. What you almost need is something asymmetrical. Snap-ons bringing them really close. That once you get in that tight, as you squeeze tight, as your hand gets smaller in its grip, you can squeeze a little bit harder. So that might be the benefit of having a really narrow handle compared to most of the others. Ideal is pretty far out there. The Ideal to me hurts the most. I think that's just too sharp a bend. That followed by the Greenlee. But it's hard to tell because Greenlee's got corners on its handles, which is a big mistake in my book. I can really feel those, so it's hard to separate the contour from the bend. And then Milwaukee, not a lot going on. Just a nice rounded handle. It does have, if I move up, this is too bowed. You really feel it. So you can see kind of if you hold up the two pliers, you can see there's a lot of bow there. And that really concentrates the force when you're choking up into the palm. Whereas this distributes it over a larger area. So this seems to be more the happy medium of curve as your hand gets smaller. As your fingers, get shorter, but also the distribution of the force across your palm. You go after one too much, and you run into a problem. You go after the other, and you run into a different problem. But anyway, I just picked these up, and I've been playing around with them. Again, look at that. Look at that. No complaints there. Compared them to my Ideals. I mean, look at these things. Come on. Snap-on, little bit looser, but still nice. I mean, look at those old ones. Good grief. People say, just use them. Well, man, 50, 100 years. Milwaukee's, solid. Greenlee, little on the stiffer side, not a deal breaker. And then Klein's. These Klein's, these are my good ones. They're beautiful. I also have Klein's I can barely open. But anyway, that is a comparison of some of the Linemans, and this is the Knipex version. So I'm sorry it took me so long to get it, but you know, I feel better that I finally added this to my tool chest. And with that, Doc out.